Today, Bitcoin rises after new U.S. jobs data shows the labor force grew nearly 30% less than previously thought. Plus, we're on the ground in Wyoming for a new crypto conference, and Anthony Scaramucci lays out the political state of play for crypto. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Tanea McKeel on the ground in Jackson Hole, Wyoming for day 2 of the SALT Blockchain Symposium. Crypto prices are mixed after the Labor Department revised down the job growth in the U.S. economy. The updated numbers show 818,000 fewer jobs were created between March of 2023 and March of 2024. It's a sign that the U.S. labor force might not be as strong as previously thought and could in turn further push the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. By noon Eastern, though, Bitcoin was higher, climbing more than 1% to the $59,000 level once more. Ether, also in the green, rising to the $2,600 mark. Solana, though, moving lower by 1.25% to $140. All right, let's jump right to more from conversations here on the ground in Jackson Hole. I spoke with Anthony Scaramucci, chairman of SALT and managing partner at SkyBridge Capital, about his goal for this conference and where he thinks the political conversation around crypto could be headed. Thank you so much for joining me here. Let's start with the event itself. We're very familiar with SALT, obviously. Why are you putting on this conference? Why now? Why here?
Well, I would say why now? It's the precursor to the Fed central banking meetings. Why here? Figured if the Fed was having an annual central banking conference, it might be a fun idea to put on a decentral banking conference somewhere in the same area. And obviously this is a beautiful resort, and since we're in crypto, we're a little bit more bougie than the Fed. And so this is like Lux here at the Four Seasons. I understand at the resort that they're at, it's a little more rustic.
It's an interesting time in crypto. It's August, so trading is usually a little bit sleepy. It's been volatile this month, but generally it sounds like everyone can agree that there's more upside here than downside. What are you expecting to get out of this event? What are some of the key themes that you're expecting to hear about or that you've heard about so far?
Well, let's talk about the fundamentals for a second, because I think you're right. We've traded sort of sideways to down recently. Some of that, I think, is just related to supply overhang. You had the Mt. Gox bankruptcy, the eventual distributions. It took 10 years. You had some sovereign selling, which I think included the United States, but also the government of Germany sold a big stash of their Bitcoin. I think that also put pressure on the markets. But I think the reason why you are suggesting that the market sentiment is still bullish, you've got a lot of incoming net inflows to the Bitcoin ETF, net inflows to the Ethereum ETF, and so there's a general bullishness. Also, it usually takes a few months after a Bitcoin halving, and so we've experienced the halving in April, and a result of which things churn a little bit, and miners sell because they need to make their revenues. But as that selling abates and supply constrains again, I think we're going to have a very good second half of the year. And I think what I'm getting out of this event, why I love doing these events, is that there's a lot of industry leaders here. There are Bitcoiners. There's people here from Solana, people here from Kraken, people here from Avalanche, Algorand. There's just a whole host of different things going on here, and it gives the community an opportunity to get together and create more collaboration. So I'm a big believer that the industry is so nascent that we need to stick together. We need to form bonds with each other and figure out ways to help each other. And so I like to think of the industry less as each of us competing with each other and more about, okay, how do we collaborate where a rising tide lifts all of our boats?
Normally, this is kind of the part where crypto feels separate from everything else, but it is, a big theme in the markets right now, the election and how that's weighing on asset prices. How are you feeling about where the industry stands?
So I've been working very hard to try to have people think about Bitcoin and regulation in general around the blockchain and cryptocurrency as bipartisan. And I think if we're being brutally honest with people, the Republicans led the idea that they were going to be pro-Bitcoin. And so Donald Trump does deserve credit for that. Maybe it was Vivek Ramaswamy or others that got to him. He was very negative on crypto, and he's now pivoted towards crypto and, of course, spoke at the Bitcoin conference. And so there's a group of us that are with Kamala Harris who've endorsed her that want to see some type of pivot or change for the Democrats. And I would just remind people from a regulatory perspective how early it is, and I'll take people back 10 or 12 years ago where lots of regulators and government officials did not want Uber in the marketplace. If you asked them, they didn't want Uber. The taxi licenses were good enough, but the people wanted Uber. And I think that's true about crypto in general. The people want crypto, as evidenced by the number of wallets that are out there. And so it could be a pivotal point in the election. I don't think the Democrats believe that yet, frankly. I think they think it's too small of a voting group. But I would just remind people, if 50 million people have wallets, and let's say 3% of those people are single issue voters, that's 1.5 million people. And there are a lot of those people are in swing states. It could be a single issue voter. So I think it's a very risky strategy to be anti-crypto. And so I'm hoping that Kamala Harris and the team associated with her will make a pivot and be more open to the idea of fair and appropriate crypto regulation. And I do applaud the Trump people for doing that.
Do you feel that bipartisan support that we have started to see evidence of in recent weeks this summer? A lot of people in this space will say that crypto does have a lot of Democratic support, and it doesn't seem like that because primarily of Gensler and Warren. Do you agree with that, or do you think that we could use a little bit more on the Democrat
Well, we could
side?
we could use a little less Elizabeth Warren, a little less Gary Gensler, and more Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer. I've met with them individually, and they're on board. Ro Khanna is on board. There's a lot of very smart Democrats that are on board, and if you look at the dispersion demographically, it feels like older Democrats not on board, younger Democrats on board, and so I think that speaks to it as well. I think we have to move to the next generation of leadership, and we have to make sure that the United States doesn't lose its mantle of financial services leadership. So yeah, we need more. We need less of those guys, more of the other thing. And listen, I want to be fair to everybody for a second, though, because if you think about Senator Warren's position or Commissioner Gensler's position, they do want to ward off fraud. They do want to ward off bad activity. And I'm going to say something that may probably make Gary fall over because he knows I'm a detractor of his, but I think the decision to delay the ETF helped the industry. And so let's just look back with the benefit of hindsight. The delay of the ETF allowed for the trapdoor of leverage, excesses, and the exposure of fraud. They approved the futures ETF in November of 2021. Imagine if they just followed the rules and approved the Bitcoin Cash ETF or spot ETF a couple months thereafter. They may have not been able to uncover all the fraud, the over leverage in the system. So people criticize Gary Gensler, but I actually think in lots of ways they've helped the industry more than people are willing to admit.
I am finding stablecoins actually to be a big theme of this conference, which, so far, it's sort of day one. Stablecoins, we heard from Wyoming today about their stable token project. They are, I will recap this, creating or developing a stablecoin backed by the US dollar that would provide an alternative payment rail for its citizens and businesses. What do you make of this area of crypto as sort of the gateway to mainstream adoption?
What I applaud the state of Wyoming for is the strong libertarian bent to their legislator and to the governor, Governor Gordon. I think they've done a very good job of understanding that this can be a laboratory for the rest of the country. And so if they get that legislation passed here and they're using that rail system inside the state, hopefully we can export that to the other 49 states. There are many reasons to be here. The Fed is here, so we want to be a decentralized version of that centralized conference. But secondarily and equally important is the state. The state is very pro-crypto. It's very pro-regulatory friendly. And in many ways, I think they're, from an intellectual perspective, they're going to lead the United States to the right place.
Do you think it's realistic to see in the next 5 years, 5-6 years, consumer payments built on crypto take off, at least in the United States and developed countries?
I think it's very realistic, and I think it'll be meaningful cost savings to the consumer. So just imagine walking into the restaurant and avoiding the 3.5% credit card charge, where you're asking the waiter or waitress what their wallet number is, and you'll then transfer to them a stable coin potentially on your phone, goes to their wallet, and it eliminates those fees. You know, I had a group of economic advisors to the government of El Salvador visit me during one of the UN General Assembly meetings, and they talked about all the expats here in the United States that send money back to their family members, but they have to go through things like Western Union because they're unbanked. And Western Union charges large fees. You could send $1,000 back to mom and dad, maybe they get $925. Imagine a rail system where it's payment to payment, wallet to wallet. The El Salvadorans believe they can save upwards to $400 million if they're able to saturate the market with that idea. And so that's a country of 7 million people. Imagine if the world could do that. Think of the trillions of dollars of savings that could go into economic innovation, economic opportunity for a vast majority of the world's citizens. So these are all good things, and I think as regulators understand the goodness of this, they'll come towards it.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow with more from here in Wyoming. We'll see you then.